torn it down. And maybe they tear all the schools down after I get finished with it. After I got finished with Frigidaire, they sold it too. So there you go. So that might be, we better be careful. They might sell out the studio here. Well, to depart from that, I shouldn't depart from that. But anyway, we had to go to school.
You ready? Okay, now we're going to start with the film. Okay, so go ahead. Start with going to school.
Anyway, we had to go to school, and that was the convenient one, and that was the only one, and it was only a one-room schoolhouse. Was unused to that, as having gone through the 7th grades in the city of Dayton. It was then Schiller School. There aren't very many people who remember the Schiller School because it was later changed to Longy and then Lincoln and then torn down. But anyway, it was quite a contrast from having gone to the city schools where there were great sized classes and teachers for each class and all sorts of subjects, and even including German. I took several years of German until the war started, and they discontinued the books, burned the books, and discontinued the education in German. Anyway, coming back to the Brown School, which was just across at the end of our lane, it was convenient for the school system for us to kind of care for the school. They didn't have janitors at that time. Everybody kept things clean and in shape for their own use. The school was one school, a single room, had a stove and a woodshed. And people used to bring in coal into the woodshed to burn in the wintertime. We had kindling in the woodshed from trees that had been cut down and limbs and so forth. Now, having moved from the city to the country, they didn't have the newspapers. We had newspapers in the city, but out here in the country, they were not delivered, and consequently, you did not have newspapers to start fires with. So at that time, we used coal oil. If we had newspaper, we'd crumble the newspapers and put some kindling on top of it, and then the heavier wood, and then finally coal, and we'd fire up the stove for our heat in the wintertime. Summertime, we didn't have school. We worked in the summertime.
So let me try one thing. Why don't you tell Dave pause tape?
Am I?
Pause tape? Can you pause the tape? Let's try.
Okay.
Well, so having come from the city schools to the country schools, it was quite a shock to go into a single room school where all 8 grades were being taught. Some people seem to think that you cannot learn as much in a single room school like that, but that's erroneous because in this school,
Yes.
We need to start from the very start because of the lights.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Sam, all that you said before, let's start with the part where you lived across the road from the school, okay?
Yeah.
And
I don't remember what I said. I'm just
okay, well,
doing
just go ahead. That's all right. Just start from coming from town, living across the road from the one-room school, and you were 13.
Yeah.
Okay, just say that.
You want me to start from the beginning?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
well then, starting from the beginning, my family moved to the country in 1918.
Yeah.
Exact date, July the 13th, 1918. I remember the date because my birthday is on July the 12th and we moved the next day. My mother and I came out alone to start with. Then the rest of my family came a little later, a month or so, or weeks. But anyway, this is not a story of our life, it's a story of Brown School.
Yeah.
So Brown School was located at the end of our lane. It was a one-room school. Having moved from the city of Dayton, I had attended Schiller School, which few people will remember that being a Dayton school. It was out on Dover Street in Omer Park area. The Schiller School is no longer there. It was later changed to Longy School and then Lincoln. And after Lincoln, it was dismantled, and now it is a new school is there, which is the high school, if I'm correct. But anyway, speaking of Brown School, the contrast was quite some different. It was necessary to go the hours that you ordinarily do. However, there were no maintenance crew or janitors or superintendents or principals to take care of things, and we got the assignment to kind of keep the yard clean and the schoolhouse clean, living so close to it. I had 6 brothers, all of which were not going to this school, but some did come later that you will hear about. So we were asked if we would be kind enough to keep the school and the yard clean and make the fires and clean the chalkboards, etc., floors, which we did. Going to the school, it was taking care, as I said, all 8 grades. And a lot of the teaching was audible. There would be recitation. And being in the 8th grade, I was not very much interested in what was going on. But my wife, having gone also to a single-room school, came up through those grades, and she contends that the recitation was a great asset because she would hear these lessons recited from her grade on up, and she was prepared then later on for those upper grades. Now, my experience was much different because I had gone through the 7th grade in Dayton. The curriculum was quite different. In fact, some of the things that I had taken in the 7th grade were being taught, excuse me, in the 8th grade at Brown School. So I didn't have to do very much studying or even solid attention. I'm sorry to say that I could have learned more than I did, but I did get along all right. My teacher was Al DeShare, and the grades were arranged so that the younger classes were up in the front and the older classes were in the rear of the school. The seats faced west. The door was on the west side, so we were close to the 8th grade was closer to the door, and we could get out more easily. It was a pleasure, an actual pleasure to go to that school when I did. Mostly, I think, because I didn't have to study. There were only a few other people. I can't hardly remember the names of the people who were in my grade or who attended at that time. But if I remember correctly, there were probably 15 or 20 people, consisting of all of the grades. It was necessary in the wintertime to heat the building, which we did with a pot-bellied stove. And it was our duty to light the fire and have the school warm for when the students would arrive. So we would go up to the school early, say at 7 o'clock, and get ready for the school to start at 8. I may be incorrect on those hours, but the time element is relative. So we would start the fire mostly by the use of kerosene or coal oil, because papers were not readily available. The newspapers at that time were not distributed in the country, and therefore the only few papers you have are those that you would get occasionally. So we would use kindling, very small limbs from trees that had been chopped down and prepared for this purpose. The school had a woodshed, as we called it, although mostly coal was stored in there, also wood. So it would be necessary to get kindling from the woodshed and little heavier branches or split wood and coal in. Coal would be brought in a coal bucket. We'd have 2 coal buckets so that we could balance ourselves as we carried it from the woodshed to the inside the building, and it would be readily available when the fire would get low. We could restoke it. So mostly that's about it. There were, as I remember it, there was a slight platform in the front of the school on the west side, platform being about 6 feet deep and the width of the school. The recitations were done from that platform or from the desk if you were lucky enough to be able to sit down and recite. All grades, like I said, had the same routine. Maybe 1 hour the smaller children would recite and prove their ability, while the older ones would be intermingled in between. We would, if I recall right, we had arithmetic, reading, writing, English, some history, none of the higher mathematics, just the regular arithmetic. So I enjoyed it very much, and we had recesses and lunch hours. I particularly went home for lunch, but we'd come back early, and I think that there's about an hour for lunchtime. But during those times, we would play Andy over the school with a ball, or play ball out in the schoolyard, or inside when it was raining. We played a lot of games, among which was spin the bottle. And if people who hear this can remember, maybe they don't know what spin the bottle is, but they would take a milk, people would sit in a circle, and they'd have a bottle in the middle of the circle, and they would spin it, and whenever it would stop, that person was chosen to be a partner of another one that was chosen in the same way, and they would go out into an area that was not audible to the rest of them and tell a secret or something of that sort to each other, and come back to the circle, and it was the duty of the rest of them to try to unfathom the secret that we've told to each other. And of course, sometimes we'd have kissing games by the same method. That pretty much would cover my part of this interview, and it's a pleasure to be
Thank you.
good.
We enjoy listening to it now. I think we need to got it? Anything else?
All right, done?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's enough? You have any questions?
That's great.
Yeah, really great, sure.
Time when you, Cletus, and you start with, when you were a first grader, that you were a first grader.
Yeah.
And when?
I first went to Brown School in 1920. I was in the first grade. And I only went there for half a year. There's a reason for that. The reason it being that this Vandalia Centralized School being built up in Vandalia proper itself was finished at the midterm of the year. So I only went there for a half a year. Now during that first half a year of my schooling, Alda Niedert was the teacher. And I can remember her to this day. As a matter of fact, one time we was having recess. And some of the older boys and everybody was out in the yard, and they happened to look down the lane where we used to live. Now, we had moved up in back of Brown School. Now, there was a barn down there where we had moved away from, and there was, I can't tell you what the nationality was, but his name was Mr. Uhas. And he had a habit of making some unfermented wine, or whatever you want to call it, but we called it Raisin Jack. Well, he was in the process of making this. It was illegal, but nevertheless he was doing it, and the barn caught on fire. Well, luckily, the boys in the upper grades, they run down there, which was approximately, maybe 250 to 300 yards. And they grabbed the first thing that they saw, which was a tub of raisins that had just been watered down so that it could start fermenting. So they picked that up and they threw that on the fire, and that is what put the fire out. Now, after that, they all come back, and there was a fire wagon, but it was horse-drawn at that time, and it never did get there. And it was lucky that the barn was saved. Now, after doing all of that, when I start going up to, they start busing us up to Vandalia Centralized School. Now, the one thing that I can remember very prominently, after getting off of the bus, and by the way, they were Rio buses at that time, and a man by the name of Ed Cotterman was the mechanic on the new buses. And he was there even when I graduated from Vandalia Centralized School. But getting back to going back up there, one of the first days that we went up there, it was so windy. Now, we only had to go maybe 20 feet to get to the door. But it was so windy that I could not walk or anything else. And the children, bigger children, had to take a hold of each hand and lead me to the door, or otherwise I would have been blown away. And that is facts. Now, we lived there after the school was closed, and my mother and father had moved several times. But in the end, in 1938, I believe it was, we moved back into Brown School house itself, which at that time had been converted to living quarters. There was 3 rooms in it, as far as I can remember, and there was a central fireplace, and I can very distinctly tell you that that was there for this reason. I and my wife today spent an evening in front of that fireplace with my mother and dad observing what we done. So we was behaving ourselves, believe me. Now, it was in 1939, in April, that I moved away from there because that's when I got married. And I'm still married to the same lady today. So that more or less takes care of everything that I can tell you at the present time. Now, is there anything else that...
What about the water? Was there any running water in the Brown School or electricity?
I believe that we had a well, and there may have been running water, but now I wouldn't absolutely positively say that. But I believe there was. But at just about the extent that I can go into on that. So,
Was there electricity?
oh yes, there was electricity, but we also used a lot of candles at that time. Just primarily because the electricity was not dependable, because if there was a little bit of a storm, there went to the electric, but it wasn't all that bad. So that's...
There was a kitchen then in the
yes,
back?
there was a kitchen and a bedroom and a big living room. And that's
Stop for a second, I'm sorry.
Okay,
and that was just about everything that I can tell you about.
okay, good.
I was wondering if you could talk about the unreliableness of the electricity, like altogether, instead of answering questions. You know, if you,
Oh, he wants me to shut up and let him talk?
no, I guess what he'd like you to do is just to go back and say, you know, whether you had running water, and then talk about the electricity and why you had to use candles.
Yeah, okay.
Again.
All those
Yeah.
3 points, just as one story would be good, and then it'll be a lot better.
Okay,
There was no running water in there when there was school.
yeah, I understand. Yeah, okay, now, did you understand what they want, just from the time that your parents lived
Yeah.
there, go into the electricity
Yeah.
without me having to ask you the
Yeah.
question, so that it's a reminiscent
Yeah.
of yours?
Well,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, anytime.
Ready? Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yep, we, when I lived there, occasionally we had to use candles occasionally because the electricity would go out. If there was a storm or anything like that, why, the electricity would go out temporarily, maybe for some time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, or maybe an hour. But it was never a big deal because we had candles, and we also had kerosene lights that was available. But I would say that in the overall, it was pretty good. Now, we did have running water that I can remember of, and we also had a well that we occasionally used out of. And the reason we used the well water was because of taking a bath. Now, we did not have a bathtub. What we had was a basin and a wash tub, and it was a galvanized wash tub, and that's the way that I had to take a bath. Now, this was not all bad. Now, as a matter of fact, I sometimes wish that we could go back to those things, because that was a real experience that you don't experience today. And that's the way things are. And I appreciate everything that modern technology has brought to us. And I hope that in the future that it gets better. So therefore, I'll thank you for everything that's been done.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, Cletus. I think we're done.
yep. Ted's getting the tape ready.
Okay.
Maybe a second or two.
Okay, fine. We thought you'd bring your wives with you. I had chairs out there.
I
for your
asked,
wives to-
I asked Mary if she'd like to come down, but she said no, so.
She didn't want to, huh?
Okay, Ted's ready whenever you are.
Okay, during the winter time, we had to heat the building. We did that with a pot-bellied stove, using wood and coal and so forth. It was necessary to do it earlier than the school hours because of the comfort of the children and, of course, the teacher. Teacher living farther away than we did, it made it a lot easier for us to accommodate that than it would be if she would have to come early. The fire was started much different than it is these days because now you just crumple up some newspaper and stick it in your fireplace and put a little kindling on top of it and other wood, and away it goes. But during those years, the newspapers were not so easily attainable. They were not delivered like they are these days. Now, the papers were available, but in the cities, but in the countries, not so well. So in order to start these fires, we used kerosene, which is a very dangerous thing to do. We had to make certain that the fires were out, that there were no embers, no hot embers or anything, so we would take small pieces of wood, sapling wood, limbs and so forth that would ignite easily, and stack them up in a little teepee sort of a way, and with a little heavier wood on top of that, and some leaves or ashes or whatever you had available underneath. We would pour some coal oil or kerosene on this wood and light it with a match like anybody else would. Now, kerosene burns much slower than gasoline. You cannot use gasoline to do that, but you can use kerosene because it burns slower and you can light it and get away from it. There is no explosion. It simply ignites and produces a fire. So it's easier to do that. The wood was stored in a woodshed outside the schoolhouse, and coal was furnished by the farmers or the school system or wherever it came from, but it was stored in the woodshed also. The wood and the coal was carried into the schoolhouse by the use of a couple of coal buckets. I don't really know whether anybody would remember what those looked like or not, but they were probably held 3 or 4 gallons.
have to
Okay. I will.
help me.
All right, let's start.
All right, you starting or?
Okay. You just say, I start with, I came to school early each morning.
Well, in the coming to school there, I came through across the passageways from the highway clear across to the one that went down and across the dam. And I'd go through there was farmland there, and some of it wasn't used, and I'd get up in the morning and hurry across there to get there before the children would come. And it's surprising, but some of the children like to beat me there. But I had, I don't know, a fellowship with them, it seems to me. It was really friendliness rather than trying to get something. And they'd come and want to ring the bell. We usually tried to ring it about a half hour before time, and they'd come and always bring their lunch with them, and they stored that across the entranceway there, and where they hung their coats. Then came inside there with the school, and we began, well, the front of the schoolhouse was along the road, the
gravel road at that time, was it?
well, yeah, more or less. They were beginning to build the dam there, and that brought in a lot of children that hadn't had the advantages that some of these children had, even though they were out in the country. We can't figure, I think today, what it was like at that time of the year, or that time of, well, the school years and everything, how things were changed. We had all 8 grades in the school, if there was people for them. And sometimes we skipped a grade or 2. We had the first graders, and they were always up in the front, closer to the desk there. But the older children have, when they get their assignments, instead of fiddling around, they'd come and help somebody in one of the lower grades. And sometimes when we had maybe one 5th grader and one 6th grader, we'd put the 5th and 6th grade together one year, and then the next year, while we'd do the 6th and 5th, I guess you'd say, together, and then they'd go on through. I can realize some of them would get through with their work that they had to do, some of the older ones, and they would come down and try to work with some of the younger ones and help them along, which was a good thing. And sometimes we put a couple of grades together, like 5th and 6th grade one year, and then the next year we'd have the 6th and 5th grade, you might say the same, and then they'd go on to the 7th and 8th grade.
For lunchtime then?
Oh, at lunchtime, everybody brought their lunch there, and we came, usually ate at our desks, or in the wintertime more, we come back to where the stove was and all. And then we had...
Excuse me, could you start over about lunchtime? I had a little problem.
Okay.
They want us to start over about lunchtime. So start by saying, for lunchtime, they would bring their lunches in.
At lunchtime, all of us would bring our lunches and eat either in where we sat or in together. In the fall and spring, when it was nice, we'd go outside and eat. And since we were all there together, we'd take about an hour for our lunch, and we'd play out. I would go out and play with them. They liked to play baseball and things like that, but everybody was congenial and tried to help each other in everything.
You talked about bringing soup sometimes?
Well, some of these children, I think that they came from Kentucky and from really the hills of Kentucky, I would say. And we were surprised that for their lunch they'd have dried bread, or maybe if they had hot cakes or whatever they had for breakfast. They were really not well fixed up as sandwiches or anything like that. And it kind of bothered me that I didn't think they were getting any nourishment. So I got a big kettle. My mother always had kettles that she could use. And we started making vegetable soup on top of the stove. I don't know whether you know those pot-belly stoves with a place on the top that you could put water or anything. Well, we made, in the morning, started our soup, and then at noon we'd have, everybody would get some soup to eat with their lunch. That's mainly in the wintertime, too.
Must have made the classroom smell good.
Well, yes, it would. Make it smell good, and you want to get something to eat. That's and probably these little youngsters, I can't say that we had any trouble with them. They all worked together. Today you find a little group here and a little group there, and they don't get along very well. But of course we didn't have that many children. We only had around, I don't know, 30 or 40. 40 was a big classroom. It was more around your 30s. And
What about the last day of the week? Did you have spelling bees?
usually on the last day of the week, we would have a little program of some kind. And they would build up what they wanted to do, and we'd have singing and poetry and stories, and use that for just a time to get together and enjoy each other and things. Pardon?
Did the parents come?
Not always. Mostly, though, we always had a Christmas party, and the parents came and helped with it. And a couple times we had a program, and they came and people would come and take part in it, and the children would make up their own programs too. We tried to get the children to do as much of it as they could, but it was all, I don't know, it was a new experience for me by a long shot. I wasn't used to.
How old were you?
Well, I was just out of high school.
They're going to have to stop for a second.
Okay.
I think
Okay. They're stopping to change the tape.
Oh.
I know, but we didn't say that,
Yeah.
that you had children whose fathers were working on the dam. You might want to mention that.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I would like for you to also tell about you got the water from outside at the well and brought it in, and everyone drank out of the same dipper. Okay.
Well, now where do you want me to start?
Ted would like you to start about the dam and the people who moved up from Kentucky to work on it. That's what he'd like you to start with.
Okay.
But it'll be another second.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just talk then in the meantime. Okay, did you understand where he wants you to, tell about
The children, or the
Yeah.
dam people.
the dam was, the
Yeah,
dam,
don't call them that, though.
the
You can
dam,
start whenever you're ready.
They,
dam was-
heard that enough when they were there.
the Taylorsville Dam was being built. And
Yes.
so the children came to Brown School.
Came to.
Yeah, and then I'd like you to go into that about everyone drinking out of the dipper, you getting the water from outside.
Do you want
Bringing
to
it in.
want me to tell you how old I was?
Yeah, sure. Yes, if you could, can you remember to do that then? Go from how old you were and
I
into
don't
the.
know.
Well, you can, I think what Ted was suggesting is, you see, the problem is.
They were beginning to build the
Oh,
dams.
sorry. They weren't quite ready.
Oh,
Okay.
they ready now?
Yeah, sorry.
All right. When I started teaching, was the time that they were building the dam there outside of Vandalia on the, I don't, what river, can't remember the river, what is it, Stillwater or Miami, the Miami River. And the children, a lot of the people they brought with them were from Kentucky, and seems like the people that didn't get much room to do things there, and they brought them there to help them, and the children came too. The children had not very much of a background for education at all, and we ate our lunch in the wintertime, especially around the potbelly stove there that heated the room, and all of us, and we could see what everybody had in their lunch pails. And these youngsters sometimes had nothing but a crust of bread, or if they had pancakes or anything like that, well, a cold pancake, which was something that hurt me more than them, I guess, because we weren't used to that kind of eating. And I decided then that I would try to see if I could make some soup and get them to eating the soup. So we made a pot of soup and put on the stove and let it cook in the morning while we were doing our things. So they all seemed to enjoy that, which was part of it. I just want to tell you too about when I was a junior in high school. I had a high school teacher who encouraged me and said, go down to Miami University in the summertime and get your education for teaching, and then you do that, and then you can get a school to teach. Well, between my junior and senior year, I went to Miami University. I was one of the poor, dumb country girls that didn't know anything. I have seen, after that, I can recall people that would kind of make fun of me, really, but I was too dumb but anyway, I went there and then went to high school, and but after I was graduated, I went back to Miami University for the summer, and that was the thing they were doing at that time. And then I came back to Vandalia. They promised me a school, and they told me I'd have a school when I came back. And that fall, I had this Brown school. We call it the Brown School, and it's a small one of the smaller ones that was in Butler Township, and had the children. Some of them were for the farms around, but some of them were from the people who had come up from Kentucky and Tennessee and to work on the dam, and they didn't have much at all. So that was the thing that made up our school, and we kind of got a little, I don't know, upset about it, I guess, and then we tried this soup, and everybody had their soup at noon. After I think of it, I don't know whether all of that came out of my pocketbook or where I got the money or how. I know that my family would do what they could for it anyway. But that was part of the days. Everybody went out in the yard, and we took about an hour for lunch, had lunch, and then they played games out.
Oh, sorry. Ted would like you to do the label or dipper story now.
Okay.
So we'll drink the tea.
Okay, can you tell about the well and bringing the water in and the kids drinking?
I can't recall, except there was a pump out in there.
Well, okay, let's start with that then. Say there was a pump out there and you
There-
brought the water in.
There was, well, for water, we had a pump out in the front of the school there, and we'd go there and get a bucket of water and bring it in, and we had, instead of everybody bringing a cup or something, well, that was the time that you used tin cups for everything too. So we had a big tin cup that everybody would dip into the water and get their water, and they'd drink out of the teacup or out of the cup that was there, so that sometimes we would get a bucket and fill the bucket with the water from out there, and then some of them would bring their own cup, but they'd dip it in or take a dipper and dip it out. Or if you weren't watching something, they'd drink out of the dipper. It was all kid stuff, but I hope that we did get a few things across to them to make their lives happier for a lot of them. And
Okay.
that was about the only things that we did. The toilets were out in the back. They had one for the boys and one for the girls, but they were right close together. But those were out there. And the children helped to keep the yards clean up. And we all played baseball together. Even I went out and played with them, which I'm not a player of any kind for outside stuff, but that was part of it that we did. Then we had the Friday afternoon, these programs, and at Thanksgiving we would spruce things up a little bit and maybe have a special program, and then have something dessert-like or something like that. And Christmas was also a big time. The parents, the mothers especially, would come in. You had, really, the parents were in back of you. You can't, for practically everything, and would try to help as much as they could. But now that was, I think I only was there about a year and a half. Then the centralized school was there, built in Vandalia. And so all of the 7 or 8 country schools were closed up. They'd get the things, they take what they could out of the old schools and bring into the new schools. They couldn't furnish new things for the schools. It was all the old things for the new school in Vandalia. So now you've got more schools.
Okay.
I wanted to know if there are any other major topics.
No,
you want-
that's it now.
That's it? Okay, I guess that's it.
Okay?
Okay. I hope you got something out of it that you
Oh,
wanted.
no, it went very well.
I don't know. Probably a lot of things you think about after it's over.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can see now.
Okay.
Well, should I stand or?
No, just sit right there.
Okay. Well, to start with, we get up early, have our breakfast. And from the time I was 6 years old, I washed and dressed myself to go to school. Mother had 3 lunch boxes to pack, and she put in bread and butter and apples or orange or banana, whatever we'd have. and cookies that she had made. And sometimes when I got to be 12 years old, well, I learned to bake pies. And she'd put a piece of pie in a little dish. And then we'd open our lunches at school. But we ain't to school yet. So we cross the road, climb a fence, climb a hill, a steep hill, and another fence, rail fences. They didn't have wire fences then. They had mostly rail fences. And we...
Yeah, we're picking up a lot
That's
of...
on, just go to school.
we called the fence the first thing,
Yeah.
and up a hill.
Okay, wait a minute. Start by saying we went to school by crossing the fence across,
We went to school
Yeah.
by crossing the road and climbing the fence, and up a big hill, a tall hill, till we got to the top of it. Our legs was pretty to give out. Then we called another rail fence, and all over cultivated fields, 2 or 3, into a woods, climbed another fence into the woods, and went up through that woods and up past a residence, which afterwards was a Bodine. Or no, the Bodines lived there because the Bodine children went with us, and that made a group then, our 3 and their 2. And we went to that school down the Brown School Road, which still exists. And I'll have to think. And we entered the school and carried our lunchbox and books and put them in a corner cupboard and went on and hung our coats and things up, went up the aisle to the seat that we had been assigned to. That's when we were small. Then when we got bigger, we got to stay back in the bigger seats. And when we would recite, we'd walk up, get out of our seat, walk up the aisle to the bench, and we'd all sit on that bench and have our lesson. Sometimes I had it, sometimes I didn't, just as usual, Then when we were dismissed, we went back to our seats, and another class would go, and so on through the day. And the teacher sat at the desk up on the platform, and there was blackboards all around, up the sides and across the back and up the other side. Then on a Friday, the parents mostly would come, and we'd have to cipher before them, have a contest, and have spelling. And that was a joy to me for the spelling class. I loved to read and then learn to spell all those words. That's quite interesting. And then whoever won would have to stand up in front, and the parents would bring them a little gift.
Just go on and talk about whatever the next topic is. Discipline or whatever.
Okay, you want to talk about the way the teacher disciplined the boys and girls?
Huh?
About the way the teacher disciplined the boys and girls?
Oh, the father and mother would talk to the teacher and give a report, about, and the teacher would give the parents a report. And sometimes it wouldn't have very good reports, you know. Then when we get home, Mother and Father would shame us and tell us they didn't send us to school to get a bad report like that.
How did the teacher discipline the boys and girls? How did the teacher discipline the boys and girls?
Very good, very kind. Sometimes Minnie Mills now, maybe you're acquainted with her. Well, she lives someplace around over there. And
Mary, that's okay. Can you tell us about recess, about going outside and playing and what you did?
we
In
went
the
out
woodshed?
and threw tag with a ball, you know, and we lined up
Okay, Mary.
two rows.
Mary, start by saying, for recess we went outside.
For recess, we went outside, and sometimes we played ball. Sometimes we played round town, tag, you know. And then we'd coax a teacher to come out when it snowed, and then we'd snowball him. And he was good-natured. Both of them was good-natured. One was Harry Huey, which he was a bachelor, and Rupert Borgers was the second man. We never had a lady teacher. But I don't think my father and mother had a lady teacher either when they went. And they were very kind to us. They never disciplined us. Me and Minnie always seemed to be favorites.
Mary, how did the teacher discipline the children in school?
We'll just talk to him. Maybe if he had a pencil, he'd tap him on the hand or something. He was very kind.
Okay,
both of
listen,
them.
Mary, tell us by saying the teacher disciplined us by tapping us with a pencil, or I would like for you to tell now about the boy having to put his feet up on the platform.
Oh,
But started out by saying the teacher disciplined us.
the teacher disciplined us by, we'd have to stand up in our seat, and then he'd come down through and tap us with a pencil or something and say, now I don't like the way you've been doing, and I'd like very much for you to straighten up. And then we'd have our class called up front for the spelling, and we'd line up. Roy Shank and Minnie and me and the Flutter boys and any other. There was some boys came from back the other way in west from the hills, and I don't remember what their name was. I never associated much with them, just the ones that I could go to see on Sunday when we wasn't in school. Once.
Mary, tell us again.
Wait a second. Excuse me. You get a reflection up your pants.
That's what I thought. I was trying to hide my pants. I could see them in her glasses.
About the platform.
Okay, now start again about the teacher disciplined the boy by making him sit.
Yeah.
Okay?
The teacher disciplined, wait till I think of his name,
Okay. Well, you don't need to think of his name. Just say a mischievous boy.
a mischievous little boy, and he
Now
would.
start out by saying the teacher.
The teacher disciplined this little boy rather rude. He made him come up and sit on the floor and put his feet up on the rostrum and have him sit there till, well, I guess he got pretty tired. Then he would let him go back to his seat.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, let's stop.
Only this time, tell us about going to play post office
Well,
for
Sure.
recess.
during his school hours, we'd write notes. You always had your boyfriend, you know, and plenty of girlfriends. And we would write notes to them, little love notes, didn't amount to nothing. After I got away from school, common school, why, that was all gone. And then when we went outside, we'd put our mail in the boxes. And there would be a postmaster in there, and you'd go in and ask for your mail, and they'd give it to you. And we'd have lots of notes, you know. And we'd tell about what we had for dinner and at home on threshing time. You know, we always had a big meal at threshing time. And there would be many mouths to feed. And when I got to be 12 years old, I got to make most of the dinner and then help serve it. And Helen, she did run around and, like she does now, you know, just kind of visit with everybody. She was always quite a little lady.
The buckboard store or anything? Or is it,
Wait a minute.
remember she was talking about going to school eventually and a buckboard or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
It's all up to you, Shirley. Whatever you want her to talk about. I think
Well,
we got enough.
I do too. I feel like we do. Why don't you go ahead and I'll just keep talking to her. You go ahead.
Okay.
But after Helen got old enough to go to school, she'd had a light sickness before she was old enough. And it left her just a little more timid, you know.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes, she told me about
wasn't quite as well as her. Then Papa would hitch up to the spring wagon, and he'd take us. But only when she started to school, then he'd come after us, so she didn't have to walk so far.
Well,
And-
that sounds very, very good, Mary. You've done a good job here.
Well,
Thank you.
is that enough?
Sure, that's great.
There's lots more to tell.
Oh, I'll bet there is more and more. In fact, I think I need to come back and just talk to you sometime now for my records. I think, do you have any trouble reading?
Reading. Well, I've always wanted to read the New Testament, and I started to read it, and my eyes are
Oh, yes.
so I can't read it.
Or to